أستغفر الله أستغفر الله أستغفر الله.
This is about as classical a picture or a cross-section of a penis as you'll ever get in your life. And even though it's relatively small, it has all of the pertinent features. You basically have three bands of very vascular tissue groups here. Here is the corpus spongiosum. Here is the corpus cavernosum. And here is another corpus cavernosum. Notice it is filled with slit-like spaces, some of which are very rich in blood cells because they are modified veins. It's a vascular plexus. This is erectile tissue. Also notice separating the two corpus cavernosa as well as the corpus spongiosum is a very thick band of fibrous connective tissue called the tunica albuginea, just like we had a thick band of connective tissue in the testis called the tunica albuginea. Let's take a little bit closer look. We could see here in the corpus spongiosum, which is single and ventrally located, these vascular spaces. They look slit-like. They have an abundant amount of smooth muscle and fibrous tissue between the slits. Some of them are engorged here with blood, and some of them appear not to be engorged, and they're just slit-like spaces. Here's parts of a tunica albuginea. Here's some looser connective tissue around it. Here are the slit-like spaces without blood. Here are some of the spaces filled with blood. And here is the epithelium of the spongy urethra, and it looks to me like it's stratified squamous, and that's because it is. So we have a stratified squamous urethra. We have loose connective tissue underneath the basement membrane. We have some blood vessels. We have some arteries. Then we have these thick, irregular, jagged modified blood vessels with a lot of smooth muscle and fibrous tissue in the septum called erectile tissue of the corpus spongiosum. Just like we'll see a similar thing here in the corpus cavernosum. Looks like we have a little nerve here. Looks like we have a more well-defined artery. And notice how a lot of these erectile spaces lined by an endothelium and having the muscle and fibrous tissue in the wall. Notice how some of these are engorged with blood vessels. Notice there's probably a nice medium-sized artery here. Notice your tunica albuginea, chiefly fibrous tissue. But if these wind up being a few little smooth muscle fibers, I wouldn't be surprised. And then we have some looser connective tissue with nerves, which will eventually wind up being a Buck's fascia, which is a modification of Scarpa's fascia, and it is not quite as dense as the tunica albuginea up here. Let's take a look at the corpus spongiosum as well, which are paired and do not contain the urethra, and they're larger than the corpus spongiosum. And just like the corpus spongiosum, you have a very similar picture here. You have these slit-like spaces lined by endothelium. You have smooth muscle and fibroblasts and collagen in between these slit-like spaces. And some of these slit-like spaces are engorged with blood. And that is, like, really, as I said, one of the nicest, most classical pictures you'll see of the penis. And don't forget, there is a deep artery in the corpus spongiosum here as well. And apart from the fact that these are kind of irregular, jagged vascular spaces, deep artery of the penis in the corpus spongiosum are really pretty big size arteries, and you couldn't confuse that with erectile tissue. But all of this here, the rest of it is erectile tissue. And I thank you very much.
هاتناول لي كفا ولنعاود من قريب ولنعد للنور صفا عهد ماضينا الأريب